The director of the CIA has one of the most secure jobs on the planet. His life is a fortress of encryption, background checks, and physical security. But on October 12, 2015, that fortress was breached. His personal email account was hijacked. His contacts, his private messages, even his application for a top-secret security clearance. It was all being downloaded. The person responsible wasn't a Russian spy or a state-sponsored operative from China. The person who brought America's spy chief to his knees was a 15-year-old boy, sitting in his bedroom in a small town in England. This isn't a movie plot. It's the true story of how a teenager with a phone and a silver tongue outsmarted the most powerful intelligence agency in the world, and what happened when they finally caught him. It all started with a simple phone call, not to the CIA headquarters, but to Verizon, the internet provider for then CIA Director John Brennan. The person on the line claimed to be a Verizon technician. He had a story, a plausible one, and he needed help from an employee to access a specific account. With a little bit of charm and a lot of confidence, he got what he wanted. He was in. A little while later, another call was made, this time to Brennan's email provider, AOL. This time, the caller wasn't a technician. This time, he was John Brennan himself, or at least, he sounded like him. Armed with the information he just tricked out of Verizon, he was able to answer the security questions. Date of birth, mother's maiden name, the kind of data we all think is private, but is often just a few clicks away. In a matter of minutes, the digital life of America's top spy was completely compromised. The hacker, using the online handle Cracka, wasn't subtle. He reset the password, locking Brennan out of his own account. Then he started digging. He found a 47-page application for Brennan's top-secret security clearance. This document contained everything: his social security number, the numbers of his family and friends, past jobs, a deep personal history. It was the blueprint to his life. He also found sensitive emails, including one with the personal details of over a dozen top American intelligence officials. And just to rub it in, he forwarded some of Brennan's emails to his own account and then deleted them from the inbox. This wasn't just a one-off prank. This was the opening salvo of a coordinated campaign by a group calling themselves Crackers with Attitude, or CWA. And their leader, the boy on the phone, was just getting started. He and his small group of online associates had declared war on the US government, and they were doing it from their bedrooms. How could this happen? How could the head of the CIA, a man responsible for protecting national secrets, be so easily hacked? The answer is both shockingly simple and deeply unsettling. It wasn't a brute force attack that cracked a complex password. It wasn't a zero-day exploit that cost millions on the dark web. It was a technique as old as deception itself: social engineering. The art of manipulating people into giving up confidential information. Cracka didn't hack a computer. He hacked a human. He exploited the customer service script, the desire of an employee to be helpful. He understood that the weakest link in any security system isn't the firewall, it's the person sitting behind the desk. And once they had the blueprint for Brennan, they realized they could use it again and again and again. Their list of targets read like a who's who of American national security. Next up was James Clapper, the Director of National Intelligence, the man who oversees the entire U.S. intelligence community, including the CIA and NSA. Using the same methods, CWA hijacked his home phone, his internet, and his wife's email account. They rerouted all calls to his house to the Free Palestine Movement, an activist group. Imagine being the nation's top intelligence official, and every time someone tries to call your house, it goes to a political organization you're supposed to be monitoring. The audacity was breathtaking. But here's where it gets truly terrifying. Their access wasn't just limited to personal accounts. They started to penetrate the government's own networks. They got inside the Department of Justice's network and downloaded files. They accessed a law enforcement portal that gave them access to arrest records and other sensitive police data. And then they found the motherlode. They gained access to a database containing the personal information, names, titles, email addresses, and phone numbers of approximately 20,000 FBI agents. Then they did the same for 9,000 Department of Homeland Security officers. With a few phone calls and some clever impersonations, a handful of teenagers had just compiled a hit list of nearly every important federal agent in the United States. They posted the information online with the hashtag #FreePalestine. The U.S. intelligence community was in a state of shock and utter humiliation. They were being systematically dismantled by a ghost, a Cracka, who seemed to be able to get into any system he wanted. And the information they stole wasn't just contact lists. The group publicly claimed to have accessed highly sensitive documents, including plans related to American military and intelligence operations in Afghanistan and Iran. They taunted the authorities on Twitter, posting screenshots of internal government portals and daring the FBI to catch them. For 8 months, from June 2015 to February 2016, this reign of digital terror continued. They were untouchable. But stealing data and embarrassing officials wasn't enough. For Cracka, this was clearly personal. What happened next crossed the line from cybercrime into a campaign of direct psychological harassment. This wasn't just about making a political statement anymore. It was about tormenting his victims. He would call FBI Deputy Director Mark Giuliano, playing his private voicemails back to him over the phone. He took control of the home television of a senior White House advisor and displayed pornography on the screen. He used another official's account to send menacing text messages to his family. So who was this phantom tormenting the highest levels of the US government? Who was Cracka? When the world finally found out, the answer was more shocking than anyone could have imagined. He wasn't a disgruntled ex-agent or foreign operative. He was a boy named Cain Gamble, and he lived with his mother in a semi-detached council house, public housing, in Colville, a former coal mining town in Leicestershire, England. The image is almost impossible to reconcile. On one hand, you have the marble halls of Langley and the White House. On the other, a teenager's messy bedroom in a working-class English town. This wasn't a high-tech lair filled with servers. This was a kid, likely sitting on his bed with a laptop, dismantling the security of a superpower. The contrast highlights the fundamental shift in modern power. You don't need a state budget or a physical army anymore. With the right knowledge and a complete lack of fear, one person, even a child, can cause an international incident. When reporters descended on his neighborhood after his arrest, his neighbors were stunned. They described him as a quiet, polite boy, the kid next door. No one had any idea that he was leading a double life as one of the most wanted cybercriminals in the world. So why did he do it? Was it just for the thrill? For the notoriety? According to Gamble himself, his motivations were political. He claimed to be acting in support of Palestine and was disgusted by America's killing of innocent people in the Middle East. He saw his actions not as crime, but as hacktivism, a form of digital protest. He told a journalist he started it all because he saw how corrupt and cold-blooded America are. This adds a complicated layer to the story. It's easy to dismiss him as a malicious troll, but his stated reasons, whether you agree with them or not, place his actions in the realm of political dissent. The problem, of course, is that his methods involved breaking numerous laws and terrorizing individuals and their families. It raises a critical question for our digital age. Where is the line between protest and terrorism? Between hacktivism and crime? Cain Gamble was living right on that blurry line. The FBI and CIA were humiliated, and they were pouring every resource they had into finding him. But how do you catch a ghost who's an ocean away and knows how to use anonymizing tools to cover his digital tracks? The investigation was a massive international effort led by the FBI and supported by the UK's National Crime Agency. They analyzed the digital breadcrumbs left behind during the hacks. They monitored the CWA's public taunts on Twitter. For months, Gamble and his crew seemed to be one step ahead. But a digital trail, no matter how well hidden, almost always exists. And eventually, a mistake is made. In the early hours of February 9th, 2016, British police officers swooped in on the quiet residential street in Colville. They arrested the 15-year-old Cain Gamble. The international manhunt was over. The most wanted Cracka was a kid in pajamas. The case then moved from the shadowy world of cyber espionage into the very public setting of a courtroom. Gamble pleaded guilty to 10 charges related to computer misuse. The evidence against him was overwhelming. The prosecution laid out the entire 8-month campaign in detail, painting a picture of a calculating and malicious individual who intentionally caused chaos and fear. They described him as the leader, the director, and the driving force behind Crackers with Attitude. But Gamble's defense team presented a very different picture. They argued that Cain Gamble had autism spectrum disorder. They brought in experts who testified that at the time of the offenses, the 15-year-old had the mental and emotional development of a much younger child, perhaps a 12 or 13-year-old. They argued that he didn't fully grasp the real-world consequences of his online actions. To him, it was a game. He was a lonely and isolated boy who found a sense of power and community online. His lawyer stated that Gamble never intended to harm anyone and was naive and childish. This created a major dilemma for the justice system. How do you sentence someone like that? Do you treat him as a sophisticated cyber terrorist who targeted the heart of the US government? Or do you treat him as a neurodivergent child who made a series of terrible, misguided decisions? The judge, Justice Haclked, acknowledged Gamble's autism, but ultimately rejected the idea that he was a naive child. He called Gamble's actions a nasty campaign of politically motivated cyber terrorism. He pointed to the sustained nature of the attacks, the clear leadership role Gamble played, and the malicious harassment of the victims' families as evidence that this was far more than a childish prank. In April 2018, 2 years after his arrest, Kane Gamble was sentenced. He was given 2 years in a youth detention center. For a teenager, even one who had taken on the CIA, that is a very serious sentence. He would serve his time at places like HMP Belmarsh, a high-security prison in London, often called the UK's Guantanamo Bay. The quiet kid from Colville was now an inmate in one of Britain's toughest prisons. The case sent shockwaves through the intelligence community. It was a brutal wake-up call. For years, they had focused on building taller and thicker digital walls. They spent billions on encryption and network security. But Kane Gamble didn't bother trying to knock the wall down. He just walked up to the front gate and asked to be let in. His success exposed a fundamental vulnerability that technology alone cannot fix: the human element. It forced a massive reevaluation of security protocols, especially around third-party vendors like telecoms and the training of customer service staff. You can have the most advanced security in the world, but it's all useless if a help desk employee can be sweet-talked into giving away the password. 2 years in a high-security facility could break a person. It could fill them with resentment and push them further into a life of crime. But for Kane Gamble, this wasn't the... After his release in 2019, Gamble was a changed person. He had served his time, and he seemed to understand the gravity of what he'd done. But his unique and powerful skills hadn't gone away. The question was, what would he do with them now? Instead of returning to the dark web, he decided to step into the light. He began using his talents for good, entering the world of ethical hacking. He started participating in bug bounty programs, where companies pay hackers to find and report security vulnerabilities in their systems before malicious actors can exploit them. He found flaws in systems for massive companies like T-Mobile. He even worked on programs for the UK's own Ministry of Defence, the very same government that had helped put him away. He was now on the other side, helping to protect the kind of systems he once attacked. The poacher had turned gamekeeper. This redemption arc is remarkable. Today, Kane Gamble works as a senior security consultant. He has a career, a legitimate one, where he gets paid handsomely to do legally what he once did illegally: break into computer systems. He helps organizations understand the mindset of a hacker, showing them where their weaknesses are, especially when it comes to social engineering. His story is a powerful testament to the idea of rehabilitation. It shows that even someone who committed serious crimes can, with the right guidance and opportunity, turn their life around and use their skills to make a positive contribution. He took the talent that made him a menace and forged it into a career that makes the digital world safer for everyone. But as neat as Gamble's personal story has become, it's just one part of a much larger and growing issue. The problem of teenage hackers hasn't gone away. In fact, it's getting worse, and the kids are getting younger. Law enforcement agencies around the world report a surge in cybercrime among minors. The UK's National Crime Agency, they likely used their own intelligence assets to try and identify the people behind the screen names, has noted that children as young as 7 are getting involved in hacking forums. They start with simple things like cheating in online games, but quickly graduate to more serious offenses like denial of service attacks, data theft, and online fraud. Some of these kids are generating millions of dollars through exploits and scams before they're even old enough to drive. The tools to do this are more accessible than ever. Malicious software can be bought for a few dollars or even found for free. Online tutorials walk aspiring hackers through every step. The barrier to entry for becoming a cybercriminal is terrifyingly low. Kane Gamble was a pioneer in some ways, a high-profile example of what was possible. Now, there are thousands of kids following in his digital footsteps, motivated by money, notoriety, or just plain boredom. This presents a huge challenge for society. How do we deal with this? We can't arrest our way out of the problem. Putting every kid who hacks a game server into a detention center isn't feasible or productive. The key, many experts argue, is early intervention and education. It's about identifying kids with these skills and steering them in a positive direction, just as Kane Gamble was eventually steered. It's about teaching ethics alongside coding and showing them that a career as a cybersecurity professional can be far more rewarding and legal than a life of crime. So, the story of Kane Gamble is more than just a wild tale about a teenager who hacked the CIA. It's a story about power in the 21st century. It's a story about the critical, often overlooked vulnerability of human nature in our technological world. And it's a cautionary tale about a generation of digital natives who can wield immense power from their keyboards, for good or for ill. From a council house in England, a 15-year-old boy held the American intelligence community hostage, with little more than a phone and a plausible story. He paid the price, but then managed to build a new life, turning his infamous past into a legitimate future. His story forces us to ask, how many other Kane Gambles are out there right now? And which path will they choose? What do you think about his redemption? Should someone who committed these kinds of crimes be allowed to work in the cybersecurity industry? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. It's a really complex debate, and I'm curious to hear what you have to say. And if you found this story as fascinating as I did, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories that shape our modern world. Thanks for watching.